Hey guys, welcome into the 14. I'm Nick Cole, and we're previewing every SEC betting matchup for week 2. Today, we're talking about the UAB Blazers visiting the Georgia Bulldogs. That's a Saturday, September 11th game at 3:30 Eastern Time. It's at Sanford Stadium. It'll be on ESPN2. From a betting perspective, this game opened up as Georgia with the 29-point favorite, and it has shrunk dramatically in the days following. It's down to Georgia minus 24 at the time of this recording. And the over-under has moved with it. It opened at 48. It's down now to 45. I'll bring in our betting analyst, Christopher Smith, here to talk about that. Christopher, what do you think about that drastic move in this line?
Yeah, I mean, that's quite the move. We've certainly seen a lack of trust in Georgia's offense to be able to put up a lot of points after the first week. But as somebody who grew up in Birmingham and went to school at Sanford, I'm always keeping tabs on the Alabama FCS and FBS programs that are not Alabama and Auburn. So rooting for UAB to do well, but I'm not so sure that they will. We'll get to that analysis here shortly. But first of all, Nick, why don't you tell us Nick's news and notes and what are the headlines around these programs heading into this matchup?
Sure. So first, let's get you the weather for Saturday in Athens. We got a high of 83, which I think is seasonably a little bit lower than we've seen in early September games in the past. Sunny early, but we're moving into some scattered thunderstorm possibility later in the afternoon. So we're right there in that middle where we should see the high, and hopefully it'll stay sunny. But there's a 44% chance of rain. But there's no major wind if there is rain. So that's sort of what you're looking for from a weather standpoint. And then just from a headlines and storyline standpoint, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the week 1 win against Clemson. I mean, I think that's where most of the nation's eyes were on Saturday night from a college football standpoint. And the game that we got, I think Christopher actually sort of forecasted, if you watched our video about that last week, he called for a low-scoring, defensive-oriented game. But I think nationally, a lot of people may have been surprised by the fact that Georgia won that game 10-3, and it was done so without an offensive touchdown from either team. They both kicked a field goal, and Georgia scored their touchdown on a pick six by who? Christopher Smith. Not this Christopher Smith, but Georgia's Christopher Smith. And I think that, it sort of leads me to my second talking point for this game is, okay, you won this big game, and there was a lot of emotion and energy involved in that neutral site game. Okay, great. But now, how do you pick up the pieces from the fact that you've got a quarterback that everybody was sort of tagging going into the season as a potential Heisman hopeful and maybe SEC Player of the Year type of guy in JT Daniels, and your offense couldn't get going at all with him against a Clemson defense that, while good, allowed points last year. You know what I mean? And so it sort of leaves you scratching your head. Where are the Bulldogs at right now offensively? And does that sort of stick with them going into week 2? Is there some extra pressure to get some scores early? Do they try to force plays down the field to get things moving? It'll be interesting to watch that. And then the third thing I bring up is just the UAB defense and what we saw from them. They pitched a shutout of their own on Saturday. And of course, a little bit different stage, a 31-0 win against Jacksonville State in week 1 and a little nice little in-state rivalry game there with a very good FCS program. So they allowed just 154 yards from Jacksonville State and actually had a pretty good little day themselves. They threw for 371 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, most of that coming from their starting quarterback, Tyler Johnston. So they're rolling in at 1-0 and looking pretty good. So Christopher, given all that information on a couple of teams that won in week 1, what are you looking at from this from a betting perspective?
Yeah, and you touched on the Georgia passing game and the receivers. But anytime I got a chance to shout out a former Hoover athlete, I've got to take the opportunity to do that, being one myself. And George Pickens, again, is out for the foreseeable future for Georgia at receiver. Went to high school with my brother. And you look at the other names, though, Dominic Blaylock and KRS Jackson are quote-unquote cleared to play and practicing, but that doesn't mean they will play. And we saw JT Daniels for Georgia cleared early last season and didn't play for a while. And Eric Gilbert seems like an enigma from a personality standpoint. He's off the team for now. Who knows if he'll be back. Jermaine Burton Smart said that he wasn't in game shape. He missed most of spring and summer, played last week, but was winded pretty easily. And then Darnell Washington, tight end, still seems out with injuries. So that's just I know people try to force this narrative now about Georgia and Kirby Smart and the offense, but that's a lot to overcome. That would be a lot to overcome for Alabama or for any other offense. So also Georgia's offense tends to start slow. The overs are 4-12 in Georgia's first 3 games of the season under Kirby Smart. This is game number 2, so that would fall into that category. I think they even had 3 or 4 players that were dealing with COVID earlier this week that Kirby Smart mentioned. And there also could be some emotional hangover in this game. And Georgia just beat Clemson. That was the hardest game on their regular season schedule. And no matter what I think about South Carolina, that's a pretty big game for Georgia next week. SEC opener against a division rival. So look at the other side of the ball. I love Bill Clark. I think he's great. He's a high school coach from Alabama. He kind of looks like a used car salesman. He doesn't have very much chemistry. He's got the little hair patches on the side of his head, bald everywhere else. And, not the slick salesman that you're used to seeing at a huge Power 5 conference. I do hope he gets a shot. He doesn't have a major pedigree or big time coaching connections, but he can coach the heck out of a program. And since UAB came back from the dead as a program in 2017, he's 0-4 against the spread against Power 5 foes, failing to cover those games by almost 9 points a game. And this is quite a Power 5 foe when you're talking about a Georgia team on track to make the playoff. Now, UAB is 30-15-2 against the spread against everybody else in the country. But UAB going against a defense that held Clemson to 3 points. And such a well-coached team, but the talent just isn't there. And that's why you've seen them falter against Power 5 teams from the SEC and the ACC and fail to cover because they played really well against everybody else, but just haven't had the talent to keep it going against these teams. So, Nick, why don't you tell us who you're picking in this game to cover and what are you thinking about the total?
All I can think about right now is that defense that I saw from Georgia on Saturday night, and I can't imagine that they can't cover 24 points. So, because I feel like they're going to be hungry to prove that offensively Saturday night was a fluke. They're going to be trying to throw the ball, even with the injuries they have. They're going to be trying to throw the ball, make a statement, if to no one else but to themselves that, hey, we do have a competent offense. We are a national championship contender. So I see them covering the 24. So give me Georgia minus 24. And then I like the over because for that same reason. It's only 45, which is a tough number to take the under on, even though I think you may be doing that, not to steal your thunder. But I just feel like Georgia's going to get most of the way there by themselves in an effort to really reinforce that they can be a good offensive team. So give me Georgia, lay the points, and let's go over 45. How about you?
Yeah, I think, what is it, the transitive property in college football where, a lot of times we say team A beat team B, and team B beat team C. So of course, team A is better than team C. Well, we know that logic doesn't always hold up and work that way. And I think the same thing is true to an extent with Georgia's defense, right? I mean, they held Clemson to 3 points. Clemson's clearly a better offense than UAB. So therefore, UAB is going to score 3 points or less, right? Well, that's not always the case. I mean, it's tough to hold a college football team to 3 points or to shut them out no matter who they are, especially if the game is out of reach in the second half. So I would not be surprised to see UAB put up 7 points, 10 points. And if you look at the spread in total, the odds makers are essentially pegging this game at 34-10 Georgia, somewhere around there, 35-10 Georgia. That would be right around the side and the total for this game. Seems pretty realistic if you ask me. It's just very tough right now to bet on Georgia to score a ton of points. And so I am going to take under 45. I think it's a good number, honestly. And I am going to take Georgia minus 24. I probably am not going to bet money on that just because I've seen a lot of sharp people that I respect actually taking UAB earlier this week at plus 27 and around there. But at this number, I think the number is pretty good. And just based on the fact that UAB has had good teams in the past and they've really struggled to cover in these spots, I'll probably stay off that number. But again, the thing that everybody should be watching in this game is how does Georgia handle a team that is much more talented than physically on offense, even without all those receivers. I want to see, can Georgia run the ball and can Georgia get some offense going in the passing game with their running backs against a good sound defense that is just physically outmatched. So that's what I'm taking. But for Nick Cole, I'm Christopher Smith for SEC 14. And we will hopefully talk to all your Georgia fans next week with some cashes in our hands.